Here's what I'm going to cover. 6 topics. Number 1, the Common App, general mistakes. Number 2, honors mistakes. Number 3, activities mistakes. 4, last minute essay tips. 5, should you fill out the additional info section? And 6, should you file an optional resume? So number 1, Common App, general mistakes. When you paste your essays into Common App, don't put a space between paragraphs. Otherwise, Common App is going to generate a double space. It looks sloppy. Number 2, make sure when you paste, you take your font out of bold and make sure that any italics that you've used don't get lost. 3, for the future plans statement, I suggest selecting other and then telling the reader what you want to study and do in as few words as possible. You get 100 characters. And don't put a period after it. Common App will auto-generate a comma and require you to indicate the degree that you want. 4, when you list your senior classes, courses, and grades, AP scores, line them all up from best to worst. So put all your APs in a row, put all your AP 5s in a row, then your 4s, etc. Number 2, Common App honors mistakes. Here's the first one. Common App will put your honors in bold on the left-hand column so they get smushed. Less is more. Number 2, at the same time, it's key to provide your reader context. Ask yourself, would a random stranger know why this honor is significant? If not, then you need to explain. You only get 100 characters, but you can fit in things like a parenthetical, 1 of 500, or Greg Redman Award, given to the best philosophy student in grade 11. Number 3, Common App says these should be academic-related awards. That's true, but don't be afraid to put any other impressive honor here. AOs read too fast to care if it's impressive. Like you won the state championship, feel free to put it there. 4, awards usually come from activities, so don't be afraid to list an award and then list the activity as well. For example, some students will list a computing Olympiad award, but then not mention they're a competitive programmer as an activity. You should. 5, don't be afraid to list an honor and then mention it again in the description of your activity. Admission readers are speed readers. It's fine to remind them. Okay, number 3, Common App activities mistakes. First, keep your titles as short as possible. On the Common App, you can use both the position and organization boxes. They will all appear as the bolded title above your description. And do not feel like you need to list both the position and organization for any activity. Typically you will, but like captain varsity football, you don't need to put the name of your school as the organization. Your AO is reading you by school groups. They know it's your school. 2, do not list multiple positions in your title. Just pick the best one. If you become a captain, an editor, a president for an activity that you did for 4 years, you don't have to notate that you're only captain in grade 12. Admission officers understand how it works. They don't think you're saying that you were captain for all 4 years. If you were, say so. 3, for descriptions, I advise you write normal sentences in the first person. For example, I researched how exercise affects mental acuity. When you write normal sentences, it makes your writing more readable, it gives you more voice, it sounds authentic, it makes you stand out. Most kids use active verbs and they write fragments that are hard to read. 4, try to limit your description to one impressive or interesting thing you've done. Don't summarize your position. AOs don't care that you planned meetings. It's usually better to just say one cool, sexy thing you did. 5, don't use symbols in your writing like the plus symbol or the ampersand. It's not readable and it's clear to your AO that you're trying to stuff your activity with too many words. Trust me, less is more. AOs want to read as little as possible. 6, the order of your activities is important. If you put in activity number 1, you should probably be writing an essay on it. 7, feel free not to put down 10 activities if you don't have strong ones. It's an immediate signal to the reader. You're being thoughtful. Almost no one does it, so you stand out. And it makes your reader like you. Be brave, trust me. All right, 4, last minute essay tips. Number 1, your first sentence should be your best. Find it, consider leading with it. Number 2, usually kids waste the first paragraph getting warmed up. I bet many of you can cut your first paragraph and you'll have a stronger essay starting with paragraph 2. Number 3, a similar idea. Try cutting the last sentence of your essay and end on the previous one. Often students fall into writing cliches and they try to wrap up essays with overstatement and a bow at the end. Try cutting that last sentence. 4, don't use acronyms unless they're well known. NASA, FBI. It makes your reading less readable. And often AOs don't know what the acronym stands for, so spell it out. And then you can just use part of the title instead of, let me give you an example. The United States Naval Academy, or USNA. You can just write the Academy, or Naval Academy. Your reader will understand what you're referring to, and it's much more readable. 5, don't expect your reader to remember things from the honors or activities page when they're reading your essays. So provide context if you talk about that startup you founded in the middle of an essay. Also, admission readers can read your application in any order they want, and they jump around. So don't rely on them reading everything sequentially and remembering everything. 6, minor point, but always opt for italics instead of quotes. Quotes clutter your writing. Italics are cleaner and more readable. That's a personal preference. 7, reread your essay. Circle all the forms of to be. You're likely in the passive voice. Switch to active, pick a better word. 8, cut as many modifiers as you can. It makes your writing sound more understated and authentic instead of gushing and over the top like everyone else. 9, finally, don't feel like you need to hit 650 words. Trust me, AOs are thrilled to read less. I've worked with many, many students who wrote 500-word essays and they got into Harvard and Stanford and all the best schools. All right, 5th, should you fill out the additional info section? This is a subject of debate. Here's my best advice. Try hard not to fill out the section, especially for applications that have long supplements like Stanford. AOs are reading your honors, activities, a COVID essay, personal essay, 5 short answers, 3 250-word essays, 4 letters of recommendation. The last thing I wanted to do was read more in this section. And usually kids misuse it. They stuff it full with every last honor and activity they've ever done. It's a bad look. A long application like Stanford gives you plenty of opportunities to discuss things. And you get judged on your self-presentation, essentially how well you fill out the application. Also, many students misuse this section to highlight bad grades or to talk about how a teacher never gives out an A. For almost all of you, you're just spotlighting a problem that an AO might not care that much about. And as hard as you try, your attempt is probably going to sound like you're making an excuse. So, when should you fill this out? I think you can use this section to write 1 or 2 sentences that do provide important context about something you can't find a way to write about elsewhere in the application. Or put a single link to a page that contains more information about the things you've done. For example, you might say, if you're interested in learning more about my research, I've provided a link here. That's it. Or you might provide 1 sentence on an academic situation. 1 point of context about my senior schedule. I'm taking 2 science courses because I've already maxed out foreign language. That's it. But in general, I'd ask your college counselor to put any context about grades or special circumstances in their letter of recommendation. Now, I've seen former Penn AOs that agree with me on this, and I've read former Dartmouth AOs who think it's a missed opportunity to not fill this section out. Here's my best advice. The longer the school's supplemental application, the more I'd lean away from filling it out. That means a school like Stanford with 8 additional writing prompts. But for schools that ask only 1 supplemental question, like a Northwestern, then I might fill this out. Those AOs, maybe they're more willing to read it and it could give you an edge. Of course, there's all sorts of exceptions. This is just my best thinking. As one former admission officer, use your own best thinking. 6, and finally, should you file an optional resume? This is an easy one. No. Why? Because I've seen hundreds of high school resumes. They're almost all bad. Admissions has your activities page. I wouldn't submit unless you're confident your resume is stellar. Now, if you have to submit a resume, then please keep it to 1 page and use a model like the free ones that Harvard provides. And then use all the advice I gave you for the activities page. Keep this document as clean and readable as possible.